This video is a continuation of last week's video. I'll put a link to that video down below, but I didn't end up including this part because it was an incident that took place in August of last year and it kind of got the other video off track. However, I still wanted to include it as it was a really interesting story. D&D also had another controversy with AI being used in some of their products. My roommate at the time, who is a professional artist, was commissioned with the task of replacing the AI art and redoing it in a more acceptable manner. So I'm going to bring him in on the call and kind of get his perspective of what happened. To my understanding, and I'll let Quintin let me know if I get this wrong. There was a piece of concept art that was done in-house, and then it was given to an artist who then had to make an illustration for one of the D&D books. This freelance artist, instead of actually doing the work that they were commissioned for, they just kind of AI'd over the concept work that they were given. I think the art was commissioned at a time when AI wasn't as well known that it was happening, so it got through their channels supposedly. When it entered the public sphere, when AI was a lot more of a hot topic, it got called out immediately, and then Wizards, again to my understanding, retracted the art and immediately recommissioned it.
So I think that was back in August, right? It was whenever the original art the previews for Glory of Giants premiered, right? And I think it was over the weekend at Gen Con. And so that was a pretty bad weekend for that to be a controversy.
Yeah. Why this is important is because Gen Con is one of the largest tabletop conventions in all of the world. I believe it is the largest one in North America. And Wizards of the Coast, D&D, Magic the Gathering, they're all part of the same company. Wizards oftentimes is one of the largest presenters and definitely one of the biggest names in that space.
Which, you mentioned the original art being commissioned. So I worked on the original Glory of Giants commissions as well. So I think that was almost exactly a year before. So that would have put us right around the time where generative AI Midjourney was kind of just coming out and people were experimenting.
Yeah. The art directors, there was no, rules or anything against it within Wizards internally because it wasn't, an issue at the time. So they weren't, looking out for AI when that work may have been being reviewed.
I think so. At that time, nobody really knew what was going on with it. Nobody knew the legality. I mean, we still don't. But I don't think it was really being used in workflows that people were expecting. Yeah. But that brings up to another question whenever you look at the actual art itself. Not, if there are these pretty bad anatomy issues, those should also be being looked at, not just this is AI, but actually the quality of the work. But
yeah, I remember seeing I believe it was April's concept work. So that was the original concept pass in-house, right?
Yeah.
It looked great. It looked fantastic. And then the artist who did the AI pass on it after that, who I believe was just a freelance artist that they had worked with before, who was an actual established artist, to my understanding, just kind of did an AI pass over it, and it just kind of made the concept work worse.
Yeah, in a lot of ways they look like just upscaled versions of the concept art, which is really sad because I remember whenever that first image previewed, I was on Twitter immediately, and I was like, April, these are so cool. Because, I mean, the concept art was what was previewed first. And I remember, April being, incredibly excited to see her giant dinosaur children coming out. And it was, really cool to see these. And coming from somebody who did other dinosaurs in the book, I was really excited to see what other people had done.
So do you know... So when the AI version started making its rounds on Twitter, and then everybody started adding at Wizards of the Coast, was that work ever published, or was it just previewed?
It was published. Yeah, I think the book came out that weekend.
Oh, okay.
So I think they previewed it at Gen Con, and then it was either very shortly after or they gave out copies at Gen Con. So it had already been in
I see.
print, and nobody had noticed that.
I see. By the end of Gen Con weekend, they had already put out a public statement clarifying that they did not want generative AI being used in their freelance artwork or their illustrations, and stating that they would make that much clearer in the artist guidelines moving forward. And I think a lot of people felt that this was a really great response from Wizards of the Coast.
Magic, it was implemented a lot earlier, like many, many months earlier. And then I think Dungeons and Dragons might have been a little late to the official terminology, whereas I think it might have just been a unwritten rule.
I see.
Like, I don't think people were like supposed to be using it, even when that rule wasn't in place. But I do think Dungeons and Dragons was a little bit later.
It's interesting that that wasn't like a company-wide policy, that it was like department based.
It might have been. I just know, like, once I started getting Magic commissions, after kind of a lot of the AI stuff started coming out, it would be like a little term down at the bottom, like, no generative AI use at all.
Gotcha.
So, whereas I think Dungeons and Dragons was just a little bit later to actually adding that or making a public
I see, that
statement.
makes sense. So then, that all blew up on Twitter. At what point did you get the commission for, the new version?
I think it was pretty much like, it was that Friday that they previewed at Gen Con, something like that, and it was probably early in the week whenever I got the commission.
So it was over the course of a week that they had previewed the old one, got the controversy happened, and then they already were like a couple days in trying to redo it.
So it usually takes them like a couple of days whenever these announcements are done on a Friday.
Is it like that book reprinted now with your work? Or is it, how did that all go about? Because clearly there's still going to be copies out there in the world.
I actually haven't checked my copy. I don't know which art it actually has in it.
Oh, you gotta do that, dude. You gotta check.
You gotta break it open.
You gotta check.
You gotta go
break
break
it open, baby.
You want me to?
Yeah, I think.
You want me?
Yeah, go get it.
Yeah. You gotta do it. No way.
I'm gonna get him fired. Fuck.
You can get us both fired. Like, that's what this thing is about, right? I'm like, okay, This is not sponsored by Wizards of the Coast. Yeah.
Okay, so it's the Registrar. Where are you?
I'll just edit you guys in saying nice things about them or something. Little hearts above you.
Magic, please don't fight.
Okay.
No.
You know what? Just take it away. It doesn't. It's fine. Never mind. Never mind. Next topic. Topic.
Yeah, actually, let's just briefly go back for the editing Magic.
Like, if you could get the book and then see if the new book has his art on it.
At this point, it's a tax write-off. You might as well do it.
You got it. Just opening like, oh, I guess not.
Just really trying to defend Wizards of the Coast.
Wizards of the Coast, please don't fire me. But yeah, I think the original printing obviously had the AI generative work. I do know for sure that it will eventually in future runs, and they caught it pretty quick. So I expect pretty much second run should have it, right? I haven't seen it in print yet, so I don't know if that will happen, if it has happened yet. But I do know they put it on D&D Beyond pretty much immediately.
Gotcha.
I think it was like fastest turnaround I've ever had. Like a week after finishing the piece, it was up.
Wow.
Nice. Yeah, that is, because it's normally like a year or something. Because the original was commissioned like quite far in advance.
6 months to a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I was working on the Gloria Giants pieces originally at the previous year's Gen Con, and then it was the following year, last year, that they announced it. So it was exactly like a year.
Do you want me to shout anything out? Do you want me to tell anything about you?
Should I do anything? Should I have responded to that? Thanks, Dustin, for having me on. This has been great.
That's not going in. The weekend definitely was a roller coaster, as you could see the community kind of sending a ton of hate at Wizards of the Coast and then very quickly kind of shifting to feeling like this was a really great response. It is a bit sad to see a company that, at least at face value, seems to be trying to keep AI out of their pipeline is still struggling to do this at 100%. Sadly, this wouldn't be the last time. As we saw, not even 4 months later. Whether you think Wizards of the Coast isn't being diligent enough in these checks, I'll leave up to your opinion.